Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Talk of the Now podcast. I'm your host, Gene, and my co host today is Jason, as often usual. Jason, what's happening?
Oh, nothing going on in my life at all. No, nothing at
Nothing
all.
at
No,
all, huh?
nothing.
Well, Jason, we haven't actually had a catch up episode in a while because we're doing our Star Wars discussion for a little bit.
Yeah.
And you've had a few things. And for people that don't know us, I haven't been around Jason much either because he was getting ready for what we like to call in our country a wedding. And Jason, you're married now, aren't you?
I am. I'm tranquilized and tagged. Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, hey, well, you know what? Before we go into it, though, and get a little bit more detail, as much as you want to give for the public to
yeah,
know, by
yeah,
the
I
way,
get you. Yeah.
you don't have to tell us anything. The quick thing that you would probably like to hear is okay. So I'm part of these people are going to appreciate this. There's about five people. Okay. There's a local radio show that's on Atlanta on WSB, and they have a chat, like it's its own video chat, and it's their own website. It's from their website. They have a little chat thing where you go on
Okay.
there and, people can sign up, use usernames
Right.
or whatever, and you can start chatting on it. And so I was like, man, I don't know, probably a year ago at least. I
hmm
started I made a username and just started chatting kind of anonymously or whatever. And
Right.
lo and behold, this is like maybe four or five other people chatted in it total at all. And it was on a show called the Von Hessler Doctrine. And so these people, after a while, you see, oh, it's the same three or four people that. And so after a while, you just start talking. You start talking about, me making my lame jokes about whatever. uh, so you get to kind of know them or whatever. And so
Right. Right.
at one point, maybe about 2 months ago or so, I was kind of like, because you kind of get to know them. Hey, just if anybody's interested, I have a podcast. I do a podcast. And so someone were like, whoa, you've been holding out on us. Okay, you do a podcast. And so I was like, yeah, I do a podcast. And so I gave them the link. And Jason, I must say, all of them were pretty impressed with our podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. Good.
They really I'll give them a shout out because they'll appreciate this. Now, one of them, his name he goes by the name Stefan. I'm not sure if he liked it. I'm not sure. He said that the format he doesn't understand what's a chatting thing, which is interesting because he does a chatty thing for one of his shows he does.
Right. Right.
But he's a funny guy. So Stefan's one guy. There's a lady that goes by the name Knoll Lady, as in the Florida
Seminoles, Florida
Seminoles,
State.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she is on there, and another lady, her name is, oh gosh, just leaving me. Another guy named Jack. He's always coming on there and saying, hello or what, or whatever. And
Right.
the other lady, she is probably going to be extremely upset if I cannot remember her name because I'm on the spot now and I'm trying to see. Long story short,
Okay.
this was and I know I'm going off on a tangent here. The Von Hessler Doctrine used to be on in the mornings,
Yeah.
and it stopped being on in the mornings, and they changed it to the evenings from 4 to 7. And so when they did that, it kind of, I think people weren't really going to listen to the new show as much or at all, which is basically the Mark Aram show. For those in Atlanta, you may or may not know who Mark Aram is. And he basically was, I guess not basically, but he kind of, they didn't like his show as much. So they don't listen as much. So I don't chat with them hardly anymore at all, really, except for here and there and a few other places
Right.
on that. So basically, you have that kind of in the background. And basically, I'm stalling because I'm trying to find this lady because she will appreciate the shout out here. And while I'm doing that,
yeah.
tell the kind folks where you went for your honeymoon, by the way, when you got married.
Well, first we got married here in Georgia, just near Winder, in Auburn, Georgia. So yeah, went to a place called the Carl House. I'll give them a shout out. It was a great venue. I had a great deal. And actually, the guy we're talking to here, Mr. Gene,
I was in
actually
attendance.
did the videography for him. Yes, he was in attendance with his wife, and he actually videoed various parts of the event for me, and I'm very appreciative. And you know, well, you don't think we're not going to do something for you. I don't care what you say.
Oh, no, no,
Um,
no.
and I did tush anyway. um, and then we actually went to a hotel by the airport, so we'd be closer to the airport.
Ah,
We had our another good friend of mine, Monty, as our chauffeur to leave the event and then come back to the event later, so we could change and actually leave. And then he took us to the townhome, which is now our townhome. And I had to struggle to make sure that my wife didn't rethink her bag packing or any of that mess. So she just fed her cats, and we got in the car and drove down the airport and left the next day for the sunny country of Iceland. Um, yeah, we were in a very Nordic setting. That's the best way to describe it. And otherworldly setting, honestly. It's just God showing off, is what I call it.
mm.
Um, because we get off the airplane, and the airport is far from Reykjavik, the capital. And we get off the airplane. We had scheduled the Blue Lagoon. Anybody that looks up Iceland, look at the Blue Lagoon. It's like a mineral silica, warm hot springs kind of thing. It's huge. So we
Mm-hmm.
had scheduled time. Wasn't till 1 o'clock, and we're off of the airplane at like 9:30 or 10, and we were jet lagged, and so we're driving through what is basically lava fields. And so it's disorienting as it is when you got jet lag. And this peninsula is actually where there's a volcano erupting right now.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to give a
What's her
shout out to,
name?
To Terry Berry. I found,
Terry
sorry,
Berry.
Terry.
All right.
It totally left my mind. I guess because I hadn't
Terry
chatted with you on
Berry.
the thing for a while.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to remember her name because she gave us the biggest props. She was raving about our podcast and said that
Yeah.
she had actually, this is great. She, instead of, she said that basically she was listening to our podcast over the new time slot guy because she liked it so much. And she even told me at one point that she was praying for you and
Oh,
your wife
wow. Okay.
and that kind of stuff about having your wedding. So
Oh,
I just
oh
want to
my
give a big
gosh.
shout out to
Really?
her as well for
Oh,
that. So
well,
you
I'll give
people,
her a shout out too. I've never talked to her, but yeah.
Terry Berry, Jack, and Noel Lady and Stefan. So for whatever reason, it's interesting. I've never had a part thing where you get
Wow.
so involved with just chatting with people online that
That's
happens. So
awesome. Man, that's
anyway,
good stuff. Good connections too, Gene.
yeah, Iceland.
All right,
Go,
so yeah, we're driving around going to the Blue Lagoon, so we decided to do a little sightseeing. And this peninsula where we were at shoots off kind of near Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland.
mm-hmm.
Um, Vik, by the way, in Icelandic means bay. So they've got all these towns with something Vik and something bay. So a Reykjavik is Smoky Bay. Um, anyway, so we went out and looked at some waterfalls, went to a hot springs, and if I could have scratch and sniff on the photos, gosh, talk about some sulfur smell. Anyway,
Ugh. One of my least favorite
the earth
smells.
has gas, by the way. I'm just saying the earth needs to watch what it eats. But we get to the Blue Lagoon, and oh my gosh, Gene, perfect thing to do the first day off of the plane. I mean, it is so relaxing,
I saw that
so
movie as a
relaxing.
kid, Blue Lagoon.
Well, not
Probably
that
shouldn't
not
have.
that same thing. No Brooke
Okay.
Shields involved. But they had a swim up mask bar where you get this mask to rub on your face, and you have different stages, and they've got a swim up regular bar and all that stuff, and they've just really great.
So
People in
you wore you wore one of those masks
Oh
that the
yeah,
ladies wear.
yeah, you'll see pictures later, Gene. It's too bad I don't have a slideshow prepared. But we did that. Next day we did a self-driving thing. I had the most pathetic rental car I've ever had.
Right or left hand side of the road over there.
Oh, it's right. It's the right side. So, um, but it was a little automatic Hyundai i10, which is basically like a Hyundai Accent that we have here. It's a little hatchback, but worse. With a
Hmm.
questionable transmission that just decided I don't want to shift to the next gear yet, guys. But drove that around. It was a trooper though. As long as it fit my wife's oversized and very heavy suitcase, it was fine. So we drove this thing called the Golden Circle, where it's like basically in a national park there, and you leave from Reykjavik and you go. We stayed the first 3 nights in Reykjavik at a really great hotel, awesome place. Um, and we drove this Golden Circle, which is in a national park, and you get to see all these features like crazy geothermal waterfalls everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look is like a desktop background, basically.
I can
Got to
vouch for
see
that because
where,
I've seen the pictures.
yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. And I'm going to be showing Gene and his wife more pictures, from
Ooh.
our whole adventure. But I mean, some of
Are you
the
gonna
waterfalls
bring
are
a
just crazy.
an overhead projector and we'll do a slide in the living room type
All
thing?
right,
Because that'd
yeah,
be
I'll be
kind
like the dad saying, "Watch the slideshow of my trip."
of be like my
But
one of my great uncles one time when he went to Alaska and he had the old
yeah,
video camera and it was like 2 hours of
oh
them
yeah,
on Alaskan and all you just see is just like the slow.
yep.
Yeah.
But seriously, the I shout out to Iceland just as a country. I mean, it's expensive to be
Shout
there.
out to Iceland.
Um, the people there are amazing.
Mhm.
That slightly Germanic, Norwegian sounding, accent. It's
Kind of,
just
so you had that
it's
kind of feel
wonderful.
there, huh? The Norwegian type feel.
Yeah, because it's Scandinavian in its
Hmm.
culture and everything like that. So there's a lot of
Okay.
Viking history there because Vikings were there. So it's very much that they've got some old world like Christmas traditions and things like that. We did get to on the second day. We took a guided tour, uh, glacier and waterfalls tours of South Iceland is who we used, and they were amazing. I'd give them a flat out shout out. They were awesome. It was my wife and I and two other couples, all from America, and our crazy Icelandic guide, and he took us around this like 2006 Ford Excursion diesel that
Oh
was
wow.
raised up with these crazy balloon tires, these
Oh, I
big
saw
Mickey.
that picture.
Yeah, I mean, just crazy, insane. And he took us out and we did a waterfall tour. We actually walked on a glacier and through an ice cave. Um, with crampon things on our shoes. So we had spikes on our shoes and we had to like walk across some questionable Home Depot looking bridges over
Hmm.
crevasses. I actually got to drink a little bit of water straight from a glacier. And it's like it says, it's filtered, it's pure. There's nothing, it gets filtered through volcanic rock, which is awesome. Cold as snot, about numb my hand. But it was it was just a crazy experience. And we drove 5 hours through Iceland up to through from Reykjavik up to Husavik on the
Gesundheit.
north side, exactly the north side of the island. About basically a few miles from the Arctic Circle, and
Wow.
there we went whale watching.
I didn't
And
realize it was that. I mean, I know it's Iceland and it's cold, but
it's
I didn't
far north.
realize
If you
it
look
was
at it
that
on the
far north.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's halfway up Greenland, inside of Greenland. So,
Yeah.
um, but that drive, I mean, the landscape changed so many times. We actually went through snow on July 5th, you know,
So what was the
over the
temperature
hot.
variance that you had while you were there?
Well, it never got above like 65 to 70, which was a
Hmm.
heat wave for them. They're like freaking out. We're all like, gosh, this is like air conditioning. Um,
Yeah.
Compared to our Atlanta heat of, in the 90s with 700% humidity. Um,
Hmm.
but the thing is, like, you drive, you got the coastal, like your traditional, green covered mountains down to the coast with cliffs. Then you've got your lava fields, and you ride up into what they call the highlands, which is really true because it's the highlands. It looks like the Scottish Highlands driving through it. It's crazy. Sheep everywhere, and Icelandic horses, which are stocky little smaller horses, are everywhere. The krona, it's expensive. The Icelandic krona is their currency. They're a part of the European Union, but they don't have the euro.
Okay.
Um, so basically, we figured out gas was about $9 a gallon.
Mm.
Even though it was done by liters there, but we figured out to be about $9 a gallon. And for me and her to eat at like a normal, like sit down, just okay restaurant was about $80.
80.
So yeah,
80. Wow.
80. So you have to have a lot of money
Dang. How
to
did the
go
locals
and
afford it?
enjoy
I guess they
Iceland.
just don't eat out.
Yeah. Um, and I think maybe they're so used to their economy that it, I mean, it balances out because that's their economy.
Hmm.
Um, but we did a lot of both hotels we stayed in had breakfast provided, so that, and really good breakfast for that matter. So that helped. We ate breakfast a little later, and then we just snack kind of in the afternoon on either snacks we had already or bought, and then just eat one meal a day. So we wound up spending in a day what we would normally spend on a vacation, but just on one meal. So yeah, it was beautiful. And that national park drive and the Golden Circle everywhere had cool facilities, bathrooms, big restaurants and gift stores, all the measure. And Iceland's clean too. Like you go into a bathroom, a public restroom in Iceland, it is clean.
Hmm.
Like you're not like holding your nose like, oh gosh, it stinks in here. Even at a bathroom way out in the middle of nowhere, it's like, how do they clean this? But it's clean,
Maybe if we'd prepped a little more, you could have done a slideshow because you could share your screen on this platform for the
Yeah, I
videos.
mean, and we could do
That's
another
funny.
show later on where I can just talk about Iceland since we were there.
Jason's
Um,
slideshow.
that's right. We'll call it slideshow with Dad. Oh, not again, Dad. you know, um, but just wonderful place, man. I mean, and for anybody that loves history and that loves, geologic events, I mean, you can see them all right there.
Hmm.
I mean, Iceland straddles the two continental plates, so that's why it's a hot spot.
Did you get a feeling of touristy while you were there at all?
I mean, to an extent, obviously in Reykjavik, it was more touristy.
Yeah.
But we stayed in the old part of Reykjavik and it was very, very Norwegian, Dutch kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And those people party till late in the night. I'll just say that.
Oh, really?
Because we stayed in Reykjavik the last night, but we stayed more near that district, and they're not kidding. And it also didn't get dark.
They weren't keeping you up, were they?
Well, we had the window open because there's no air conditioning because it's Iceland, and it was a little warm, and so yeah, I mean they were just rowdy ruckus outside the whole night. It's like trying to sleep in New York City with the window open, basically.
That reminds me of a story real quick that there's a guy, Martin McGee, I believe, who's on ESPN. I think he does a lot of NASCAR coverage. I saw him on an interview where he was saying that he was at some event. I don't remember what, but he said that he was in a hotel and there was he said there was like a bad imitation Kenny Chesney downstairs, like doing a live concert the whole time he was trying to sleep. And he's like, if he could have opened the window, I would have told him to shut up or I'll jump out.
Yeah. Well, and Iceland, seriously, it doesn't get dark this time of year at all. Like it'll get down to like sunsetty kind of looking, and then it stays that way until like the morning when the sun comes all the way back up.
I assume it'll be the opposite.
And then in the winter,
December, right?
Yeah. In the winter, it's opposite, and that's when you can see the northern lights. Which we hate that we weren't there in the winter, but we weren't waiting until the winter to go on our honeymoon. So, and a lot of people question like, why are you going to Iceland on your honeymoon? Well, neither of us have been there, and man, I'm so glad we did it because it is so phenomenal. Like I said, it's expensive, but if you can save and go, it's a good place to go to see a lot of different things. All in like 5-hour drive. It was 5 hours from Reykjavik to Husavik, and
right.
There's not a lot of roads in Iceland, so you drive the one, which is the N1 they call it, and it's this ring road that goes all the way around Iceland, and we drove the entire like western side of it, and man,
is it
stunning? Stunning is a word.
I wonder if it's geologically different or similar to, say, Alaska. I know there's totally opposite kind of ends.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alaska doesn't straddle. I mean, sort of is on continental, but I guess it's on the Ring of Fire.
Yeah,
but it's very similar, like landscape wise, to an extent. But it's also closer to like Ireland in some respects, in some areas.
But you get volcanoes so like kind of and glaciers and whatnot.
Right. But then you've got the green hills and like the highlands looking like British almost, which makes sense. It's between Greenland and Scotland. So like, it makes sense that it's kind of a cross between those
they never, I mean, Iceland never showed up on my radar until probably several years ago, where it's just a country that I never thought about looking into or
it's stunning. About. Dude, it's so amazing. I mean, I can vouch for it. It is a wonderful place to visit. I'm sure it's obviously a little different in the winter, and I'm sure it's beautiful in the winter too, but you can't get around because that whole N1 road, like especially going up to like through the Highlands would be shut. So
Hmm.
you'd be stuck wherever you were.
So did you
Um,
ask the locals there? Do like during the wintertime, do they just sort of everybody stays indoors and the place kind of shuts down for a while?
I mean, if you look at the vehicles around there, a lot like our vehicle that we took on that excursion. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
lot of 4-wheel drive vehicles. A lot of people just deal with it and go out, But also when it's most of the time it's night outside, it changes your whole, they're considered one of the happiest people groups on the planet Earth, country wise.
Uh-huh.
Um, so they must be doing something right in the winter. I mean,
I actually heard
I don't
that
know.
last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, okay, I get it because they all did seem very nice and happy,
You know,
and
you know what's
you
funny?
never,
Oh,
how
go ahead.
sometimes in some countries you hear about that you get an anti-American feel or something like that.
Uh-huh.
They love it. They love us there because we opened up a whole new industry, and it's fairly new for Americans to want to travel there
Yeah.
in mass like we do now, and that's very apparent by the international airport near Reykjavik, it's a place called Keflavik, because it struggles. It's crowded and there's long lines. And there's two securities when you leave. There's two customs places because you go through their customs to leave, and then you have to go every time you leave an EU. When you leave the EU, you have to go through a separate customs.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's a little rough,
I
but
think
I
I heard
think
that they actually struggle with suicide there too. Hopefully not, but
I didn't. I mean, yeah, I have heard that too, but I'm like, how are they the happiest people and then they
how can you
struggle with
have
so?
both?
I guess they're the extremes like Japan. Um,
Yeah. And
but
now you've
Iceland
been to both.
altogether, yeah, I have. And Iceland to me is just, I mean, it's the best place I've ever visited. And it's
Interesting.
all of what, like, say, Glacier National Park is, which I love Glacier. Since I went with my, at the time, fiance's parents. Last, well, not at the time, actually, we weren't even fiance yet. My girlfriend's parents, who's now my wife, back last summer, like literally to the day, like this week, we were in Glacier.
Oh,
Um, it's that kind of landscape where it's just stunning everywhere you look. And yeah, it's definitely, I will say to everybody, it's expensive to go there. It really is, because it's the same expensive as Europe. And you add the fact that it's an island on top of that. So everything has to be shipped in.
you're
So,
going to a remote island. It's not like you're going to London, which is an island,
right.
or I'm sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
Britain's an
Britain.
island,
Yeah.
but um,
Had a lot more infrastructure in Britain than Iceland
yeah.
does, for good reason. Iceland keeps their stuff wild, which I like. I really like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say to anybody else, like I said, I'll see if we can figure out a way to do a bit of a slideshow.
Yeah.
Which I guess is I just share my screen on here, but that may have to wait till I get a new laptop, which hopefully will be sooner than later.
You've been saying you
Um,
wanted a laptop for 2 years, Jason. Ah.
well, I've been kind of busy with other things.
Uh,
But yeah, just make sure you make that trip if you
yeah.
can, if you're able to. It's only if you can do it in the wintertime. Delta, no, sorry, product name, but Delta
That's
uh,
okay.
does a direct flight from Atlanta. Now we had to fly to Minneapolis and then there, so it took longer. But normally, if a direct flight's like 5 hours and 45 minutes.
Both ways you did a delay in
Yeah,
or was it Minneapolis? Okay.
yeah. And on the way back, we were delayed. We had a layover of 6 hours, so we actually bought the $50 day pass for the Delta Sky Lounge. Wow, that was the brand new one. That was worth every bit. That was the cheapest meal we'd gotten all week
Mm.
because it was a buffet. Um,
Was
but
the, so the 6 hours wasn't too bad, the layover before on the way home?
no, yeah, on the way home one. No, we only had what do we have? We only had an hour layover on the way there. But
Okay.
yeah, it was good. I mean, it was a brilliant trip. Pretty smooth plane flight. The problem is they usually put you on the smaller planes like you would fly to California, even though it's
Hmm.
international. So if you can afford like the Comfort Plus, it's probably better than nobody can afford first class because that's ridiculous. Comfort Plus just for leg room. I normally that doesn't affect me on a flight, but man, for some reason I was like, God, this leg room. I guess we're getting old, Gene.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
anyway, so that's kind of a synopsis.
I might, you know what? I might pay for I might save up and pay for first class if I knew I was going to
You don't
Australia.
understand how much more first class is. It's
No, I'm
not really
saying
worth
if I
it.
was going to somewhere like Australia and I knew that I was going to be on a plane for freaking,
Yeah,
20
18,
hours
19
or
hours.
so,
Yeah.
I
I
might
did that.
consider getting first class, but
Now, I will say on flights like that, you're on a bigger plane.
yeah.
And so there tends to be a little more legroom. It's really not worth it to pay for first class. I mean, it's really not.
Oh, not if you're
Comfort,
no, not if it's not that.
comfort plus maybe, but first class literally, like you'll take a $200 ticket for just. I'm just using this as an example. $200 ticket in regular coach or whatever. Comfort plus would be about probably, let's say, just 300, 350.
Mhm.
First class, 2,100. I mean, it's that big of a difference.
Oh wow, that is a
It's
big
not worth
difference.
it. It's not
Yeah.
worth it to be on the same plane going to the same place. I'm sorry.
I had a college roommate that went to Thailand one time, and
Yeah.
just hearing him talk about getting over there was quite the chore.
Yeah.
So,
My flight to Japan was I flew into O'Hare in Chicago and then flew from there to Narita Airport in Tokyo. But I loved it. That was a
how far of a flight was that? How
16
long?
hours.
Ooh,
Um,
that's a long time on a plane, isn't it?
yeah, like I said, it was a big plane that had the three seats on both sides and then five in the middle. So
Yeah.
you had, and I had, um, I lucked out and had on the way out and the way back an empty seat between me and the other guy. I had window seats on both of them
Mhm.
and an empty seat between me and the other guy between me. So that helps because you can just put your bag up there and you got all the leg room.
So, did you sleep
Um,
on that 16-hour flight?
yeah, a little bit.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't how long do you think you slept?
Probably about 6 hours.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. So it was really more like a 10-hour flight for you then. Felt like it, I guess.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
So
10
you
hours
didn't
of
you there wasn't a was there ever a point where you're like, dang it, I'm tired of being in the air?
uh no, because well, you have the excitement of where you're going,
Okay.
which kind of distracts you from that. Now maybe coming home, I was like, oh, let's just get home.
Right. You're just doing busy stuff or whatever while you're trying to get home. I guess you watch movies or whatever they have.
Yeah, the in-flight entertainment really does help pass the time.
Mhm.
Mostly seat back, in-flight stuff where you can just, you know, watch a movie from selections or TV shows,
Yeah, okay.
um,
Wow.
that kind of thing. But yeah.
So,
So anyway,
I didn't ask you this. When you were there, did y'all? I think I saw a couple pictures. Y'all did visit, were able to visit a beach of sorts, right? And what are their beaches like over
yeah,
there?
Black Sand Beach, actually, a black
Black
sand
Sand Beach.
beach.
Okay. Are they all
So
that way, or just
volcanic.
that was just one?
It's pretty much all that way.
Okay.
It's mostly that, or it's just rocky beach like Maine or somewhere would be.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, we were visited a black sand beach on the way back from the glacier stuff.
that's very
So
cool looking.
yeah, yeah, it is. It was neat. It's just weird. It's just crazy to
Now,
see.
how cold did it get while you're there?
It got down to, if you want to do the math really quick, because I don't know, I didn't,
Oh no, I mean
because it
just
was
I
everything was in
guesstimate.
Celsius, everything was in
Uh
kilometers, and then was in
ah,
Celsius. So it was down to 2 degrees Celsius.
okay.
So
I
whatever
don't know
that
that.
is.
I don't know how to do that math.
I can look it up somehow.
Yeah.
Um,
Was the driving simple? Driving in
but
a
like
whole
I
new
told you,
country?
yeah, like I told you, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, for a large part, you got a lot of other tourists on the road,
Right.
and equally as crappy a little car.
But the learning curve of the foreign signs and all that wasn't hard.
No, because with the kilometers, you that was what was on there, and it was only kilometers on the speedometer, so you just
Right.
adjusted.
But the sign. What about the
Um,
signage and everything?
yeah, signage is a little different. I mean,
Hmm.
um, speed limit signs are circles, um, and then you just what I did was because they've got a lot of cameras there. So what they'll do is they'll take a picture of your tag at a certain point, and if you get to the other point where the camera is too quickly,
Hmm.
they send you a speeding ticket. Um, so what I did was I just set the speedometer or set the cruise control 1 kilometer per hour lower than the speed limit. So it was
Yeah.
90 kilometers an hour, which is like 53 or so, which was the top speed limit they had there. I set it for 89 kilometers an hour. So anyway,
Man, Jason, you got me wanting to do some traveling. I
oh, it's
mean,
fun. I mean, you just have to prepare. You know that, Gene.
yeah.
It's and it's an expensive affair. You have to remember that it's expensive, and you always want to prepare for the worst as far as money goes.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
what little traveling I've done though, like for instance, when I
yeah,
went to DC in 2013, and I was only there for 4.5 days, but and I don't know if you had this feeling when you were there. Whenever I've traveled to places, after about the third day, you almost sort of start feeling like it's home in a way. Like it kind of gets a home sort of feeling. You get that kind of
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm with
you're
you. I'm with
almost
you.
kind of like, well, I guess I could just stay here if I had to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I could function here. Yeah, sure. Like,
But I mean, you know what I mean? It's
anyway.
not home, but after a few days or whatever, you're sort of like, okay, it starts getting more familiar to you.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, you've got me wanting to get that. Anyway,
Like I said, it takes time. It takes time
yeah.
and money. And you're ate up with kids. So
Oh yeah. I don't know if I'll get that European trip done anytime soon. We'll see.
yeah, you got more
We'll
time
get
to save for it.
yeah. Well, I do want to do a few
Yeah.
American road trips. I've got plenty of those
Oh yeah.
still in the bag that I want to do. One day I hope to
Me
do
too.
the Grand Canyon trip.
Yeah.
I'd like to do the Grand Canyon trip, obviously your Glacier National
Yeah.
Park trip, maybe go up to Seattle, up to Maine. Maybe I'd like to do the Freedom Trail in Boston because I am a history buff,
Oh
um,
yeah, that'd be great.
and numerous others. So
Yeah, man.
what? So Jason, what? Besides the trip, what's your first impressions of marriage life like that you want to share with the audience? Anyway, you could share. We'll do more offline with me, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, because we don't have much time left here.
No, we got
Um,
about 2 minutes here, so you don't have to give a
um,
2 minute version, but just whatever you feel like saying.
well, I mean, honestly, the traveling abroad right away was kind of a good test, right?
Uh
Can you stay on an airplane with somebody? Can you be in a car or a road trip with somebody who really doesn't like road trips? My wife.
huh.
Um, you know, honestly, we travel well together. I mean, we love the adventure side of it. I'm anybody that knows me knows that I'm more kind of go with the flow, you know, do whatever. I don't have to be super planned with anything. That she's more of a planner. So we kind of balance each other out in a good way. And I think on a trip it works out perfectly because we both want to have the adventure. She can plan it and I can go, ooh, that sounds great. And then just be really excited about it like a little kid. And it just worked out really well. We travel well. You know, obviously there was some immediate adjustments for me, like waking up with somebody else in the bed with me. Those kind of things were,
That
I
is
had
an
to adjust to
adjustment.
that in a foreign country,
Hmm.
so, um, things like that. But, for the most part, I know it's only been a week and a half. So or almost 2 weeks. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow. But right now it's been great. We haven't really had a lot of arguments. There's been some funny disagreements about things, which are good, but we tend to talk and be, very communicative with each other. So we've been doing that our whole relationship. So it's
Right.
it's going to work out for that. So anyway,
Okay. Well, give me 10 seconds. What's
take our time.
something? Can you think of anything that you learned about her that you didn't know before you got married?
No, not really right offhand.
Really, I can think of one thing of my wife. I learned that she wasn't a night. I learned that she wasn't a morning person. When before we got married, I thought she was going to be a morning person. Then after we got
Yeah,
married, I was like, "You're not a morning person. You're a night person."
right, right.
So nothing comes. Oh, you can think about it. Maybe we'll talk about it in the next one.
All right, sounds
So,
good.
all right, everybody, that's good for now. Jason, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the stories, and
Well,
we'll
there.
hit it up again next time. People, thanks for coming and joining us on Talk of the Now podcast. Thanks, sir.
Thank
Jason,
you.
have a good night.
You too. Bye bye.